All right, we're live. Welcome to the first ever episode of A Screw Loose. Four flute technicians come and give you our various opinions on various things flute related, and sometimes not. So we have a few disclaimers that we want to make sure that we put out there before we get going tonight. And the first one is that our opinions are our own and not anyone else's that you think we may be affiliated with or makers, except for Adam. Wait, I don't know where you are in this little Brady Bunch lineup. So, and we all have different views. So sometimes you might hear one of us say something and somebody else go, I actually like to do it this way. And that's the beauty of this. And this is why we all get along. And this is why we talk and pick each other's brains. We also reserve the rights to completely change our minds on anything next week. And last and most important, anything that you hear us say tonight, use at your own risk. So, you know, melt a piccolo.
That's not my problem.
That's not Adam's problem.
We're all really busy right now.
Yeah.
Please don't melt a piccolo.
Please don't melt. I mean, we'll try to help you through the problem that ensues, but like don't blame us. All right. Anything else you guys want to throw in there?
No, I think we're good to go.
All right, Kim, can you just double check to make sure that we are actually
live.
Yay, very exciting. Okay, excellent. All right, so we have a big list of questions thanks to all of the people who wrote in the various formats that we provided. And the way that we've decided to do this time around is that we're gonna just go down the list. I have 4 screws. They are loose. Haha. They are color coded. And I am going to use that to determine who gets to answer a question first. We're each going to take about 30 seconds to give our initial thoughts, and then we can have a little free for all if we feel is necessary on each question. So, you guys ready?
Sure.
Sure.
Yes.
All right. Here we go.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Yes, please.
We had a question how to log into the video chat. You should be able to just go right to the A Screw Loose Facebook page and it should be there. You may have to refresh. So if you've been sitting there early, you may have to refresh.
Yes. And also, we're not inviting people onto our Zoom, just to be clear, this time around. So sometimes some shows will do that. So you're not going to be able to log into our Zoom, but you can certainly watch on the Facebook page. And if you have questions or comments, feel free to put those into the comment section on the video on Facebook. Cool.
All right.
All right. We ready?
Yep.
All right. So the order for this question, which I will, well, let me do the question first. Okay. So the question comes from Alex, and Alex says, what repair skills would you recommend to a flutist who is not a flute tech? So we're going to start with Rachel, and then go to Kim, and then Adam, and then me. And so we'll each take about 30 seconds to give our initial thoughts on that.
Well, one of the most important things that you can do is know when not to turn screws and when to turn them. And we'll probably all go into more detail on this, but some flutes, they look like the screw is protruding and backed out, and you might want to tighten it, but some flutes are designed to be that way and some flutes are not. So that it's just before you go tightening things, you should consult with your flute technician, if it's an emergency.
All right, Kim.
All right. The other thing would be to know different, if the springs come off, how to re-engage those springs and which direction to engage them in. We get a lot of spring hooks springs that get put on backwards and it ends up popping the key open. So it looks like it's right, but it actually isn't. So that and yeah, that's the one I'd like to touch on.
Adam.
For me, it's mostly piccolo stuff because wood itself moves like an accordion with the weather and with the humidity. So you can get into certain instances where the left-hand keys will get stuck in the bind or perhaps the trills. So asking your technician to demonstrate which screws and hinge rods specifically control how tightly those fit. So that way, if it shrinks and it starts to get stuck, you can back it out a little bit so that way it will move again.
Cool. Echoing what they all said, but also adding, I think being able to diagnose. I didn't set the timer for myself. That's rude. Let's go for an hour. So being able to diagnose when something isn't right, and trusting yourself, because a lot of times you'll pick up, not a lot of times, but sometimes someone will pick up their flute and be like, this was fine yesterday and now nothing is coming out. If that happens, it means something is really, really wrong. Usually either your trill keys got unhooked and one of them is flapping open in the breeze and that will like make nothing work, or the rod right here has backed out and now these two keys are like floating in the breeze. So that's it. All right, so do we want to expand on any of that?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot to continue on there.
Okay, go.
Well, I'm trying to pick which one I should do. But yeah, going back to like loose screws, it's ideally you don't ever have to do this, so I would go looking for trouble exactly. But this is just if you're having a crisis, or if your student is having a crisis and there's something wrong, that's when to start looking for that. So, and same with the piccolo rods. You know, ideally the piccolo is set up based on your environment, and it's been aged so and set up so that you don't have the binding problem. But sometimes if it does happen, that's, you know, the more exceptional circumstance where it's helpful to be handy in that regard. So yeah, it's not like a routine matter of course to go messing with that stuff. I suppose it would clarify.
Agreed. Anybody else?
Knowing how to check your head cork position and how to check if it's actually sealing. That's a really useful trick. And then also, you know, if you need to adjust it just slightly, you know, those are useful skills that your technician can show you in like 5 seconds. You know, very simple.
And I don't think any of us would like charge to show somebody how to move their that's not a chargeable service for just showing how to check your headjoint cork and stuff like that is something that technicians should be really wanting to help out with. The other thing, moving from the headjoint cork sort of to a more global thing, would be just examining your instrument and knowing what it normally looks like. So along with the headjoint cork, making sure it's in the right place, making sure the screws aren't backing out. So I would suggest, and what I suggest to a lot of people, is that they look at what their instrument looks like when it's working perfectly, and then check in with it like weekly and make sure that nothing has changed. If there's not screws that were backed out farther than they were before or anything like that. So get to know your instrument is a really important tip as well.
Yep. Cool. Next question. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Our next question comes from Jonathan. And he says, how can I tell if my flute has Straubinger pads? So the order we're going to go in is
I like that we have screw dice.
Kim,
That's
we
awesome.
do. Then me, then Adam, then Rachel.
It's great.
So Kim, me, Adam, Rachel.
The short answer is that you can't. In order to confirm for sure that they are Strawbinger brand pads, they need to be removed. There are a couple things that you can sort of tell. They tend to be much flatter and have a harder surface around the perimeter, but really you need to take them out because there are a number of brands that look almost identical from the outside, even to a tech. So.
I agree. I guess I would just expand to say that there's 3 types of pads that look like Straubingers, including Straubingers, that I can think of off the top of my head, at least 3. 2 of them, Straubingers included, are excellent, and the 3rd one I would anyway. So anyway, if your tech is Strawbinger certified, hopefully they are using Strawbinger pads. All right, great. Adam, sorry.
Here's me stating the obvious. If your flute is relatively new as in you bought it new, you can ask. Just because the dealer will know or the manufacturer will know. So if it's pretty new and it's not been repadded, it's pretty easy to find out, you know. That's it.
Cool, perfect.
I have very little to add to all of that because that was quite complete. But if you're really still wanting to know, and none of those completely answer your question, if you can look closely at the edge of the pad, a contemporary or like Straubinger pad or similar will have a 90-degree on the edge. There'll be like a really sharp corner, you know, obvious corner, whereas a felt pad will be more of a gradient, like a radius going up into the cup. So that's how I tell at a quick glance.
Yeah, you see that curve, and then if you look closely, you can see the plastic shell under the pad skin. If you look really close, you'll see that there's a slight color difference, and that it'll kind of look like a little cake pan that's been wrapped with the skin. So that's another way.
I'm always going to see cake pans now. I love that.
Don't try to eat them, Rachel.
The Strawbinger website also has a really good diagram of how the pads are made, which might help you also visualize that a little bit better. So that's another option for if you're just trying to figure out kind of how they're made and what they look like and stuff like that. That's also a great option.
Cool. Moving on.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Moving on. Are there any clarifications showing up in the chat, Kim, that people are wanting?
No, everything is
we're
quiet for the moment.
Super clear, or no one's watching.
I think we're being super, super clear because people are watching.
Oh, good. All right. Michael asks, which flute pads are most commonly or most likely to be replaced during a COA? Are there any usual suspects here, such as the duplicate G/G sharp pad at the back of the flute or the thumb key pad? And if so, what may be the cause? Okay, so the order is me, Rachel, Adam, and then Kim. Okay. In 30 seconds. Okay. In general, no, I don't see one that's most common. I mean, some players are wetter than others, so they might need their trill keys or like their closed keys replaced more often, but it's not like a universal thing. The most commonly, not most common, I don't know, like a reason that I see often is that people are polishing the fronts of their flutes, trying to get all the fingerprints off. And everyone's like, yes. And the fronts of the pads are all frayed. And that will lead to needing replacement. Next, Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, Michael, you're onto something with the pads that you named, because all the closed key pads, especially the ones near the head joint end of the instrument, are going to be exposed to the most water, and they're closed, so they're just kind of holding water all the time. And depending on what sort of player you are, those can go more quickly than other pads. So yeah, I mean, I've even seen mold on trill pads before from that. And I was like, those are leaving. Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was going to say, especially, with piccolo stuff, because I know that I tend to put cork along the water line as do a lot of like the top level instruments. But because of the way that material works, anytime that there's any sort of debris, especially glitter, it will get up in.
Public enemy number one.
If Alex Newland is listening, cover your ears.
Yeah, glitter will get in the impression in the cork, and then it'll create this little divot that will cause things to leak. So yeah, definitely like waterline cork pads on picks.
All right.
So.
Yeah, the ones that I see the most common here, I'm in Canada and I'm on the ocean. So the ones I see the most common here for water are the D sharp, E flat, the G sharp that's on the back for water, and warping on the, sometimes we call it a body C sharp and sometimes we call it a body C, the little one that your first finger on your left index. Yeah, it sort of, in my climate, I find that they warp a lot. So I replace those routinely just so that they're sealing with light pressure.
Cool. Anybody want to expand? Adam, glitter?
Well,
Glitter.
I mean, I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit more today.
Okay.
But I mean, especially the comment about when you clean your instrument and wipe it down, be very careful to stay away from the edges of the pad cup, sort of on the pad cup skirt is what it's called, just because the way synthetic pads are made is you have that skin wrapped around the shell. And even though they do a good job at making sure it's not sharp, it's still a hard surface and it will cut through the skin if you keep rubbing against it. So
I
stay
understand.
away from the edges.
I was the same. I'm the sort of flute player that doesn't like to see stuff in between the keys. So I really empathize with the vigorous cleaners out there. But trust me, it's better to leave the stuff there and let us clean it. It's better for you and your flute, and it costs a lot less money in the long run.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I would encourage everybody to learn to love or at least accept their tarnish, because flutes are going to tarnish, and it's much better not to go at them daily and just accept that there's going to be a bit of tarnish on them. It's much safer and better for everything. So
Yeah, tarnish is just character. You know, I've seen players where their whole flute is solid black, and they like
I have.
it.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, I have clients that specifically request that I do not remove any tarnish.
Yeah.
It's part of what they like. And
This is my
Sarah has a
beautiful
key.
navy blue piccolo key.
That's the
because
coolest tarnish I've ever seen.
Right?
I want
Isn't that so
tarnish like
pretty?
that.
Yeah, I started overhauling this piccolo like a year and a half ago because it's my piccolo. It's been sitting on this shelf. Because
Cobbler's kid.
I'll get to it.
One key at a time.
But I'm kind of thinking I'm going to leave that because it's so
Oh,
pretty.
please
like,
leave it. It's so
yeah,
cool.
right?
It's so cool. All right.
All right, next question.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Judy says, I have a question about wood flutes. What is the protocol for fixing hairline cracks in a head joint or body, and what is the best way to prevent them? I'm going to make these screws fall so that Adam goes first. I mean, oh, look at that. Adam's first. So it's going to be Adam, and then Kim, and then Rachel, and then me.
Okay, so with wood, prevention is the key here. It's making sure that you don't allow the instrument to experience any sudden changes in temperature or humidity too quickly, because that's what will cause it to crack. I do not recommend trying to glue a crack yourself, but I do recommend, if you are noticing that there's some suspicious grain, immediately mark it with a pencil, just so that way by the time you get it to a technician, if it's closed back up, we know where to look. So, I mean, that's the first of a long subject.
Kim.
The only thing that I would sort of add to that is to make sure that you're hyper vigilant seasonally, just inspecting the wood. We have extreme season changes here with not so much with temperature, but for sure with humidity. And because of that, it becomes much more of a problem. And we see sort of two sort of crack seasons here. So when you know that's coming up, I would be extra vigilant about making sure you're not putting things away wet and temperature, but also just inspecting the instrument often to notice anything.
Yeah, and that brings up a good. Am I next? I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Is it
you
you?
are.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was so excited. No, so Kim brings up a great point that really a lot of people worry about temperature with piccolos, but really the biggest enemy of them is fluctuations in humidity.
Yes.
So we often you'll hear us say, like, don't keep your piccolo near blowing, like, HVAC, like blasting on it. And that's not because you're worried about getting too hot or too cold, but it's because it's going to just like suddenly like dry it out, and then it will humidify again, then dry it out. So yeah, keep it away from that.
Cool. Everything that they all said. The other thing that I would add is that I personally don't think that players need to oil their instruments themselves. I don't think that actually prevents cracks. I think it just makes your pads messy. And if I see that your instrument needs oil when it comes in, then I'll take all of the squishy things off and give it some oil. That's my time. Does anybody want to?
I mean, I go on it.
We do like a whole episode.
But once you kind of mark it, you know, like if you are a technician and you need advice on how to properly repair them, you know, please feel free to reach out. And I'm sure at some point I'll talk about that a bit more in depth. There are different kinds of glue and different techniques to make it be completely invisible. But yeah, it's the extreme fluctuations that typically cause cracks more often. And it's usually when metal parts do not change at the same rate as the wood parts. It's if the metal moves faster or if the wood shrinks beyond the shrinkage of the metal. So typically what happens is it'll expand and contract and it'll wedge itself apart from the inside is what usually happens. And one good way to recognize if you do have the beginning of a small crack is as the instrument is played, as you warm up, when you first start, it'll play really well. And then about 30, 45 minutes in, it's going to start to really suck.
That's the technical term.
We're all really technical here.
The sound will get muddy. The sound will get muddy. Notes will start to crack. Response will slow down. It's just going to get worse. And then you put it away, and then you pick it back up, and it's great again. And that's the wood moving and opening up as it expands with the heat and the humidity. So I call those Houdini cracks because they just disappear. And they can take me hours and hours to find. But that's a good way to be mindful if you do have the beginnings of a crack occurring, is that you'll play it, and then as you play in, it's going to get worse. That's it.
Cool.
For today.
For today.
Thus ends our lecture.
The only one thing I would like to add really quickly is that it's also worth, if you're buying an instrument new, it's worth talking to the manufacturer, because each of the manufacturers have very different and very specific play in recommendations, and their recommendations, but the recommendations go all the way from whatever, just play it because it's actually a sealed bore and it's, you know, so there isn't a time working, all the way to like playing it for a few minutes and then letting it sit and playing it for a few minutes. So it is definitely worth talking to your tech or talking directly to the manufacturer about those specifics if you're buying a new instrument. And the manufacturer recommendations do change over time. So if you heard something from 10 years ago, still touch base with them, because manufacturing techniques change constantly, which is good.
Yeah, I completely agree, just because as someone who's in that other circle as a manufacturer, I know that all of us treat wood very differently.
Indeed.
So it's important to ask us about that, just because we know what we have done to the wood since we purchased it as a block. And it's just important to know what they think, because they'll be able to advise you the best.
Good.
Yeah.
That was great.
Absolutely.
All right. Next, we have Angela with a 6-part question. Props for thoroughness. All right. So Angela says, as a studio teacher, I would like help with minor fixes. So instead of I'm not going to read all 6. Let's just do like one at a time. Like, I mean, I will read all 6, but just not like at once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, and then you have to remember. All right. So the first one is, what do you recommend for cleaning the joints / tenons? And our order here is going to be Blue, that's Kim, and then Adam, and then me, and then Rachel.
All right. The first course of action is going to be just using a clean, dry cloth. A lot of us prefer microfiber just because it picks up stuff a little bit better, but a plain cotton cloth is fine as well. You don't want to wet the cloth. So a dry cloth. The other option would be, if that still doesn't clean it up, an alcohol wipe. We all have alcohol around at this point. Yay, COVID. So you can definitely use an alcohol wipe to wipe up any debris, as well as a second step.
Preventative maintenance is really the secret to not having stuck joints. You just want to keep them really clean. So like with piccolo tenons and head joints, you need to lubricate them before, but you have to wipe it off afterward, or else the cork grease gets dirty and then it acts like sandpaper in the joint. And then if like it's a metal joint, you can also use that clear key oil on a cotton swab and then wipe it back off, just because the oil will sometimes help dissolve really sticky stuff.
Oh, that's me. Yes. Don't put gooey things on metal tenons. The end. So keep it clean, like Kim and Adam said. If it still isn't going on and it's squeaky clean, like don't force it, because it means that it's either bent or it's galling, or there are issues. Rachel.
Yeah, please do not force it. And also, I'm kind of a microfiber nerd, so my favorite for cleaning tenons, and actually for cleaning the flute body in general, is a really like short pile microfiber, like for electronics. I find that they grab the oils a lot better than like those big luxurious floofy ones that you want to use, because it seems like it would feel awesome, but no, it really doesn't get this particular kind of gunk as well. So yeah, $5 on Amazon.
Cool. Anybody want to elaborate?
Yeah, with the no sticky gooey stuff, you know, on the metal tenons, that's important. I also don't particularly like it when people use graphite, because they don't know if it's actually graphite they're putting on there, right, or what it is. And just putting things in there as a lubricant just sort of covers the problem, and it doesn't actually fix the problem. And then like with piccolo tenons, you know, I do recommend just using any kind of like generic cork grease. But, you know, if you don't have any and you are in a pinch, you know, just a little bit of Vaseline works. You can even use lip balm and things like that. But those products also a lot of times have glitter in them. And, I mean, they say that glitter is the herpes of art. And once you spill a little, it's suddenly everywhere. And we just don't need to be replacing pads because you got glitter. But yeah, just keep them clean, wipe them after you're done playing. Because if you don't create a problem, you won't have to fix a problem.
Yep. And I probably someone mentioned this, but making sure you're not only wiping the outside of the tenon, but also the socket that it goes into. And you can kind of use, well, I have little fingers and, you know, pointy nails that I can get that little ridge around the end.
Yeah.
But if you feel like there's something really, you know, going on in there, you can maybe take like a wooden skewer, wrap your cloth over that, and just kind of trace the inside of the socket.
Or a toothpick works well. A sewing needle.
Yeah.
Well. Also, because we forgot to mention it, if you are sure it's clean and it's still rough and you see that there are scuffs and scratches on the tenon, stop.
Yes. Because
precious metals tend to be very soft, and they tend to like to push each other around like you're ironing a piece of fabric, and that's called galling, as Sarah had mentioned it. And that can create a huge disastrous issue that can get extremely expensive very fast. So if you know it's clean and it's not going together and you're seeing scratches, stop and bring it to us back.
Yeah, you don't want someone to have to unsolder your flute to get the joints apart.
To that end, one of the things that I'd also like to say is that, having had it come into the shop when I was doing student flutes, is that what I used to see is people would try to apply various things that they would think would polish up the joints. And what can happen is if you put any like silver polish or anything like that in there, trying to clean up the joints, it sounds like it would be a really, really good idea. But the problem is, even if it's a non-embedding, the best thing in the planet, silver polish, if you put silver polish into the joint, it can actually lock up the joint to the point where it becomes not only an emergency, but one that makes technicians sweat a lot, because it gap fills, and then it can lock the joint together to the point where it is almost impossible to get apart. So if you're at the point where you're thinking, oh, I should try this, that's definitely a stop point, and you shouldn't be afraid to stop, put the instrument down, and call either your tech or a tech, and say, I've tried this, and let them do it, because we have other techniques And we can predict when things often are going to go wrong much faster than a player could, because we do this all day, every day. So it's not a weakness to, you know, put the instrument down and walk away.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a sign of strength.
True.
Right, because the last thing that you ever want to do is create a situation where we feel that we have to invent creative techniques. And those are scary, and we like that. It's what like keeps us awake at night. So
It is one of the reasons we spend a lot of time talking together, though. One of the reasons why we have this group is because you have to be creative sometimes, and it's good to have other people that have been there that are,
to go, okay, is this dumb or is this brilliant?
Has anybody tried this before, and is this likely to work or cause me, you know, extra anxiety? So,
Right.
so it is good to have that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Next.
Okay. So here's the question that we got like from 3 different people, which is, can you discuss the adjustment screws for secondary leaks? So Kim had a beautiful disclaimer before we show you anything about this.
Over to you, Kim.
I think the one thing to realize is this is the last thing you should try, not the first thing that you should try. Your first sort of thing should be always to call your tech. However, one of the things that all of us have had happen during COVID and quarantine is that we have had people asking us questions that live in locations in which they cannot find a tech. They live in a country where there isn't one. They're teachers trying to just get their kids back started up again, and all of the repair shops are closed. We all work independently out of our houses right now, so it's a little bit different. But this should be like the last thing, not the first thing you try. So this is sort of like and you do have to be aware of the fact that you can over adjust a screw and then squish it down and cause some damage. So please take notes ahead of time, and definitely do the do no harm thing, so that the examples are here to help you out, but they really are I am stuck in the middle of nowhere and I have no other options, and there is not a tech in sight, even to video, because a lot of us are actually doing some emergency video repairs or walkthroughs with clients right now. So this is literally the last ditch sort of kind of thing, or to know how your instrument works a little bit more.
Yeah.
Don't try it on your own flute, though.
No.
Try it on Sarah's. I pulled it out of the closet.
I just happen to have a flute here, guys. This is actually my baby Armstrong, my very first flute, which belonged to my sister before me. So
Hi, Armstrong.
I will sacrifice her to the cause. It's not a sacrifice, it's just screws. Okay. So okay. So all right, I'm going to do a quick, like, this is the key that operates this. This is the screw that's attached to it. And then a quick, like, how to tell if you went too far. And then a quick, like, okay, if none of that worked, then it wasn't an adjustment problem. So, all right. So the first thing that I want to point out is that there are basically 3 keys on your flute, on the main line, that your fingers don't touch. I'm going to use some pretty blue tape here. And the point of the adjustment screws is that they close the keys that you are not putting your fingers on. So I'll start with the worst one. So this one is your F sharp key. So this is, I'm going to put a big piece of blue tape on it so you can see. So if you're in playing position, it's the one that's, you know, just north of your right hand. So if I close my F key, you'll notice the F sharp key goes up and down. If I close my E key, you'll see the F sharp key goes up and down. And if I close my D key, you'll see that it also goes up and down. You know what? I'm going to, for a minute, make my video bigger so that people on little devices
good idea.
can see.
Very good idea.
Cool. Okay. So, so this is a student flute, and I kind of picked this one because the adjustment screws are really easy to see. They're right on top. Sometimes they are hidden on the back and underneath, so you might have to look like up under here for them. Sometimes the one for the F is underneath your little B flat lever, so you kind of have to like look under to get there. So the first one, so the way that this works is that if you look at the screw on the D key that's making your F sharp key go up and down, if I tighten this screw, what's going to happen is it's going to push the F sharp key closed more. So right now they're closing pretty equally, but I'm going to make this really, really bad on purpose. Like, so you can see what happens if I really crank this screw. So I'm going to be like, oh, you know, my F sharp's a little bit fuzzy, which means that when you play F sharp, this guy isn't closing all the way. So let me make it like so bad. So what I'm doing is I'm going lefty-loosey. So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I'm going lefty-loosey. I'm going to make this F sharp so leaky. So now when I play F sharp, oh my gosh, look at that giant gap, right? It's like not even touching. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go righty-tighty. This is not a recommended screw tightening position, by the way. But as I turn my screwdriver, you're going to see. Yeah, that's why that doesn't work. Okay, let me see if I can do it one more time. If I can't, I'll do it the real way. Okay, so you can actually see it slowly closing. See how the F sharp is slowly coming down? Okay, now I'm going to keep going. And now if you look at the other end, look at the D key where my screwdriver is, and you'll see that thing floating open. Okay, so now I'm going to go back the other way. And now you should see my F sharp start to pop open. There it is. Okay, so all of this to demonstrate that when you turn an adjusting screw, literally turn it like 1 hour on a clock face. And that might either like make your F sharp like totally pop open and you lose all of your F sharps, or it makes your D totally pop open and you lose your D. So 2 ways to check this if you're not a flute tech with fancy things to check. My favorite way is to put my fancy little leak light inside, and then I can just like light this thing up, and then I can see really easily where the leaks are. Guessing you guys don't have that. So the next best thing is cigarette paper. So this is literally just cigarette paper, or cigarette paper. It doesn't matter. Just grab some. You can cut this into a wedge. Doesn't have to be good. And then you can just this is very awkward to do for other people. Okay,
great.
Thanks. So now
better you than me.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do this like gently. I'm not gonna squeeze, because if you squeeze, you can make anything feel like it's closing, right? So I want it to feel a little bit grabby, and then same thing, I want it to feel a little bit grabby. So right now my D is a little more slidey than my F sharp. Okay, there's a whole lot of caveats here, which may be that all of your pads are leaking out the front. So if you just check the front, they may both feel like they're leaking. So in that case, you need to get your pads shimmed. But if it's an emergency and you're just trying to make the thing work, what I would suggest doing is feel all the way around and try to find a point of contact, and then feel all the way around the key that you're trying to adjust and find a point of contact. Try to make them feel the same. So like same amount of heaviness on each pad on the heaviest point of contact would be my suggestion for getting it ballpark. If you don't have that, use your ears. Put it together, play it. Does it sound better? Does it sound worse? I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, what really matters. And it might surprise you that sometimes lighter or heavier actually sounds better too, but that's, anyway. Okay, so this key, this screw, does that. Okay, so now with the E key, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to do the same balancing. You're going to turn this E screw until the F sharp and the E close at the same time. And again, you're going to use your ears, use your paper, whatever will get you to that point. Same thing with the F to F sharp, does the same thing. That's the right hand. So if you're having a thing happening where, C, B, A, G, oh, sounds so good, and you get to F sharp and it's like, and you keep going, and oh, maybe the F sounds better. Oh, then maybe it's an adjustment problem here. So you can kind of logic your way out. Okay, my flute does not have this, but sometimes there is an adjusting screw between these 2 keys. So the one that you don't put your finger on is controlled by the one that you do put your finger on, and there may be an adjusting screw right here, or again, it might be hidden. No, usually it's on the top.
And they're at the top.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one though. Oh, that would make no sense. Never mind.
That'd be
it's not on the
mean.
bottom. That would be evil. So anyway, so again, you can mess with that. And that's, if you're playing along and like G sounds a little weird and F sounds gross, and then all of a sudden it sounds pretty good with E, that's usually a split E problem. Okay, so that's that one. The last one is here. So when you're playing your flute, obviously you don't touch that guy. That's your actual B flat key. That's the key that makes a B flat happen. So the screw for this is usually on the A key because they go down at the same time. Okay, so this is exactly the same thing. You can find the screw, do a little righty-tighty, lefty-loosey action, and, you know, watch them go up and down, or use your paper, or use your ears. If that doesn't work, it's time to call a tech in for help. If you're in, we had someone ask this question from India, and literally no techs anywhere. It may be a problem with a bent key. It may be, like I said before, the pads themselves are uneven and you're getting leaks because of your pads just need to be shimmed, which really can only be done by a tech. I don't know. What did I miss, guys?
That was a good Survivor Man flute repair demonstration. Like, if you're on a desert island.
Okay.
And
Yes.
Yeah.
I would not recommend doing this with your professional instrument. Like, it is a learning experience. I mean, if it's an emergency, I would get a tech on a phone call. Hopefully you have a backup. If you're a professional player, hopefully you have a backup. If you don't have a backup, consider getting a backup. It takes a lot of stress out of your lives and ours. But this is sort of geared specifically towards like flutes under $2,000.
Yeah.
Would that be fair, everybody?
Yeah, or emergencies.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or emergencies, yeah.
One thing that is worthwhile thinking about is that if you do have adjustment screws and you want to know how to adjust them in case of an emergency, you can always ask your tech about an adjustment lesson. And you can take your own notes in your own words, and then you can also use Sharpies in different colors to color code the screws. So that way, when you pull out your notes, you'll be like, okay, my D to my F sharp is the pink screw. You know, my A to B flat is the green screw, you know, things like that, until you become more fluid in those sort of quick fixes. Of course, you have adjustment shims, you know, you're up a creek without a paddle, but you know, that's just how it is.
We're all hoping it's just a screw loose, right?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, it's good, man. Well done, Tim.
Way to pull
I
that all
tried.
together.
I've been waiting.
Awesome.
Now they all know why we picked the name of the show, right?
Goodness. Right?
All right.
All right. Should we go on?
Yes.
Okay. Angela's next question was, is cork replacement something that a studio teacher could do? And our order is yellow. That's who? Adam. Then me, then Rachel, then Kim.
Okay, for me,
Yes.
cork replacement. There are so many different kinds of cork on an instrument in various locations that really this is something that I feel you should let your technician do, just because depending on what it is and where it is, you can create a lot of problems when it could be a very simple fix. So for me, I personally would not like someone to do that. That's just my take on it, just because I don't want you to create unnecessary problems for yourself and run up a bill.
Cool. Me. It doesn't say head joint cork. I had interpreted it as head joint cork. And I would still say no. If it's like, only because they come in so many different, there's different sizes. And if you get it too tight or too loose, it's going to cause problems. And also, if it's an emergency, there are other things that you can do other than replacing it, which I will let one of my esteemed colleagues talk about because that's my time. Rachel.
Oh, I would actually just concur with what has already been said and turn this over to Kim, who may have some good suggestions for emergencies.
Emergencies.
Yeah. Go for it.
I again vote no. It's not really something that a teacher can do. The cork sizes here, I actually grabbed some. I went off screen so I could actually grab some. You can see those are two flute head joint corks, and they're radically different sizes. So no, because you can actually damage the head joint trying to force one in that's too large. They're all custom fit, and if you don't fit them correctly with tools that you wouldn't have available to do that, you can really damage the head joint pretty much irreversibly. So nobody wants to be responsible for hurting a head joint. They're expensive and they're all hand cut. For emergency repairs, if you have a head joint cork that is literally falling out, one of the things that you can do here, I'm just going to grab some tape and stuff, oh, excellent. Yeah. You're like all organized. I
am. Yeah.
So the two things that you can do is you can take some Rachel's got Teflon tape there. Is that what you've got?
That's
yes. Or Sarah, sorry. Sarah's,
yeah,
it's just plumber's tape. Yes, it's not.
It's been a really long day.
It's been a long day.
Tired.
Wait, you're like 3 hours behind us. Come on.
The day started at 5:30.
Okay,
it's
fine.
been fun. So
anyway,
yeah, some plumber's tape. You can wrap around the cork. You can also take some masking tape, not duct tape. And you may only have to put a little tiny bit around it and then put it back in. You want to experiment with how much you need to use, because you, again, don't want to force it. It should go in. This is an emergency repair for, I'm calling my tech as soon as I finish this concert. This is not going to last for 3 weeks or 6 months or whatever. This is literally a phone call to your tech, and this is the only thing you need done. Most of us can find a way to sneak you in for just that one thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a little bit of tape around it. You want it to be snug, but you don't want to be pushing really, really hard. If you have one of those plastic tuning rods, you should be able to very safely push it in with the plastic tuning rod without having to like wrench on anything. If it's not going in with the plastic tuning rod, then it's too tight. I don't ever advise using the metal ones, because they can they can scratch up your instrument really badly, but they also allow you to put way too much force on the instrument. So the plastic cleaning rods are great because they give you feedback on whether it's way too tight or not. So I like them for student stuff too.
And I would just clarify that the corks that we install are not going to move that easily, because we will fit them so that they are designed to be very difficult to move, but we do it in a way that is not going to damage anything, that gives you that stability but without causing damage.
Yeah, so this is for an emergency install. You don't want to put it in too tight, because a player's not going to be able to gauge how tight it should be. So this will be enough to get you through the concert and be able to play stuff. But yes, all of ours are custom fit. So yeah.
One final comment, just as this is your last ditch, like you have no tape nearby and you are a studio teacher, band director, and you are somewhere and a cork literally falls out of the instrument, like the head cork. A little trick that I saw, and I thought they were completely crazy. You can actually, if you have one actually fall out, you can go find someone that smokes and find a lighter.
Oh yeah.
And you can heat the cork just a little bit. Don't catch it on fire because that's dangerous. But if you get it a little bit hot,
they go up really fast too. I mean, theoretically they go up really fast.
You don't want it to catch fire, but you do want to just like, light just a little bit and heat it just a little bit. And that'll cause the cork to expand just enough to get you through like 30 minutes of playing. But I thought they were crazy, but it does work, because I had that happen once when I was, in a position where I didn't have anything, but someone needed help and their cork fell out, and lo and behold, it worked. Cool. So smells bad, tastes bad, but you are desperate.
You're supposed to eat it, Adam.
It's not a marshmallow.
I think it might be.
I just realized we only have 10 minutes left, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I know, right? This is nuts.
Let's talk about.
Okay. So what cleaning products, if any, Should we use on dingy nickel beginner flutes?
No.
Yeah, there's a reason mine looks like this. Yeah.
Can we not set
oh,
the timer and
we
just
want-
say there's absolutely nothing you can do to nickel plated flutes other than just wipe them down with a dry cloth, and that's it. It's cosmetic.
Yeah.
Done.
Enjoy the rock and roll, nature.
Right. Nickel naturally oxidizes and becomes matte. Just because of the way it's made up, it just naturally turns a matte color.
Yeah.
Not a thing in the world you can do to it.
And I think I have polished this multiple times over its lifetime, and it always goes back to this. And
eventually it hits a point where no matter how much you polish it, it's that color all the way through. So
yeah. Or you go through the plating and you get that yellowy brass stuff underneath, and that's worse. So
yeah,
don't worry about it. Okay. What can be done about clunky mechanisms?
Oh,
okay, hang on. Let me roll the screws. We've got Rachel, then Kim, then Adam, then me.
Okay, I love this one. But so, I mean, part of it is if you've got a really particularly clunky flute, it could be the way it's made. It also could be that it needs a COA. You need fresh oil in there if the mechanism's dry. Also, a lot of your mechanism noise has to do with the materials that are in the flute, and that's something that your technician and the manufacturer controls. So I can elaborate more on that later. I assume I'm getting short on time.
Yeah, you got 7 seconds. Go.
Yeah. Next, I'll come back to that. Big topic.
Same thing. Basically, same thing as Rachel. Usually, it means it needs a COA. The mechanism loosens up over time, so that's something that would be addressed. Technicians do have techniques that we can use to help with specifically clunky mechanisms, one of which is we can customize types of oils. If it's not a proprietary oil that needs to be used, sometimes we can help that clunky with using a different oil for mechanism noise.
And kind of adding to that, a lot of times it's a lack of oil in the mechanism that'll make it kind of noisy. But on that subject, don't try to oil the instrument yourself, because I have literally seen an instance where a flute wasn't playing and the parent brought it in and I saw that it felt greasy. So I took one of the pads out, and here's just, like a pad just for reference. When I squeezed it between my fingers like that, oil squeezed out of it. So don't try to oil your mechanism yourself, just saying.
I would say clunky mechanisms, especially for flutes that have adjusting screws, sometimes it could be that they put a silencing paper underneath the head of the screw, because otherwise it's metal on metal, clack, 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 clack. Flutes that don't have adjusting screws, if they get that noisy, it could be just the adjusting materials have aged or could have fallen out, in which case your flute also wouldn't play as well as being very noisy. And some student flutes aren't made with any silencing material, so they're just naturally noisier. Anybody want to?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. Do you want me to make you big?
We have
sure. Yeah,
I can make you big. Okay.
That would be good for this, actually.
Right,
I'm going to bring in a helper from the audience. This is my personal fluter, one of them. So we went over a lot of reasons why mechanisms can be clunky, but one of them that I mentioned was the materials used. And so I'm talking about like the stuff on the kickers, and also on these adjustment spaces too. There's either cork or felt, and what you use there can greatly affect the mechanism noise. And also with those materials, generally speaking, there's a compromise where the softer it is, the quieter it is, but the less stable it is. And so as technicians, we try our best to split the difference with the thing that is the most stable, but also not like clink, 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 clink while you're playing. And that's quite the dance to do. And manufacturers have to deal with this as well, of course, because when they set up their flutes, they have to make those decisions. Also in the way that the keywork is designed, if you have connections, especially on a lot of pinless flutes that are very broad, that there's just more surface area. So of course, it's going to be more audible potentially. So that's just scratching the surface. But yeah, in general, you've got kind of like a sliding scale where the quieter it is, the more it's going to compress. Because look at like how the keys, they're repeatedly striking the body or striking each other at the adjustment points, and they're going to compact and compress over time. And the softer the material is, the more that's going to change. So, okay, someone else can talk now. I'm sorry I talked so much.
That was great.
And then along that line, you still have, a while ago there were makers using different kinds of foam underneath the keys, and foam breaks down over time. And some of those manufacturers had some of that material for a while. And as foam breaks down, it gets kind of sticky and it gets kind of hard as well. So not only do you sometimes get issues of it feels crunchy when you close your fingers, but then when the key bounces back, you hear this clack, because it's this hard foam that's hitting metal. And some people have figured out different kinds of foam that work a lot better. But there have been issues in the past with, as flute makers try to evolve and improve their work, sometimes you try things and it's great at first, but then 5 years in, not great. So everyone lives and learns and they develop. But that can also be an issue if, the flute has some age on it, since it's been overhauled, that you could sometimes have a material that's breaking down, deteriorating. So.
To add, yes, to add on to that, it's definitely one of those things that you want to mention in a COA if you're noticing more noise, because we like to customize stuff to the player within reason. And if you're noticing that it suddenly got hard or like a lot louder or clunkier over the last couple months, but it was fine for years and years and years, then often we can proactively replace things before they necessarily need to go, especially those kickers and stuff like that. If you're starting to have problems with something, the foam we were talking about earlier, one of the things that happens sometimes is it also gets really tacky. So the key will go down and then you'll actually feel it. And sometimes it only does that in certain temperatures, in certain weathers, in certain conditions. So it's really important to have a relationship and a dialogue with your technician, because we're here to help you, but we can only help you if we know that every third Friday it gets sticky when you play outside. So it is worth making notes and talking to your tech about any concerns you have about that kind of stuff as well.
We have like 2 minutes left, so I would like to, just for the sake of rounding things off, get to Angela's last mini question.
Yeah.
Okay. And that question was, what do you use to clean in between the key work? So we got me, Rachel, Adam, Kim. My
Do
short
we need
answer,
4 people to discuss?
yeah, okay, well, so my short answer is like, I don't. Let us take your flute apart, and if you are, finding that it's getting gunky, consider what may be causing that gunk to get in there. So like, are you leaving your flute on a peg most of the time? Do you have a Persian cat that likes to hang out with you while you practice? Anyways, somebody else can jump in on that.
Well, okay, also, if you do see buildup happening that you're really just like, that really bothers me, think of that as like an oil change reminder on your car. That's like, it's probably time to get a COA. If you're having enough debris where it's like building up on the flute visibly, that's usually kind of like around the 1 or 2 year mark, and it's time to take it in to get cleaned. Because as we've already discussed in this show, it's really not a good idea to get really zealous, like getting in there in between things. It does more harm than good. So that's a nice visual reminder that it's time for service. Okay.
And also, like, when people take various kinds of devices, well, I'll use that word, devices, to get up underneath to try to clean things, a lot of times they'll end up either scratching something, tearing a pad, breaking a spring, unhooking a spring, and you basically introduce the potential for additional problems, when really this is just a matter of like personal like cleanliness, you know, with this. And it's a matter of, okay, it just means it's time to have it serviced. Now, okay, I don't like it, but it is only cosmetic at this point. And if it's creating a problem, an actual problem, you have to come see us anyway. So we wouldn't worry about it. You know, if you're trying to get in there with like a cotton swab with like alcohol, like you are asking for trouble. And we really don't want you to create unnecessary problems, because we always feel bad when we have to talk to someone and say, hey, you have a really high bill coming your way because we've noticed these things that are happening because of the behavior that we recognize. And that's the worst feeling ever, is to have to approach someone that's expecting a low bill and be like, hey, you've got 13 ripped pads. It sucks all the way around for everybody.
Yep.
So yeah, don't try to get under there yourself. Let us do it.
All right, Kim, we're about a minute over, but do you want to add something?
Just that one of the things you also have a potential, if you're trying to get in there, is to knock, we were talking about those silencing papers. One of the big things that can happen is you can knock those silencing papers loose. And why that is a big problem isn't actually because your flute gets noisy. It's that the silencing papers are connected to regulation. So all those screws that we were showing you how to do, it means that your flute will now not be regulated anymore. So your cosmetic cleanup can roll into something really, really expensive. If you just have a little bit of dust in it, talk to your tech. We can help you maybe help prevent the dust, or just kind of clean it up ourselves quickly. It doesn't always mean it has to be a really, really expensive bill, but it isn't really something you should be going in there with tools, even paint, even like makeup brushes and stuff. Still a really bad idea, because you can actually get a brush bristle, I can say that, stuck between the pad surface and the tone hole, and it can cause a world of hurt for you. So just talk to your tech. We're here to help. We're not here to charge you lots of money. We hate charging money. most of us just like we hate charging huge bills. It's we want it to be as painless for you as possible. So
all right, I can't believe that was an hour. That went by really fast.
Wow,
I know.
we did go.
I'll have to do another one.
we should do this next week.
We have some additional questions that came in that I have added for next time. So sorry we didn't get a chance to do that today, but we will definitely go into some of them further next time.
Yeah. So, awesome. So, well, thank you.
If you liked it, let us know.
Yeah, and thank you to all those people who are watching, and we're really honored that you took an hour out of your life to come and listen to us natter on about flutes. Anyway, keep the questions coming. We hope to do this again, possibly next week, but we'll talk and we'll let you all know when it happens. So thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.